My ex-father-in-law and I occasionally used to write articles for San Diego Magazine, and I remember one article we wrote where he told a story about how they built the University of California, San Diego. It was just a bunch of people from San Diego, kind of ordinary people, that they just kind of met once, and they started raising money, and they started knocking on doors. The newspaper, the local officials, the state officials, the congressmen, TV people. They said, listen, we need a school down here. We need a University of California, San Diego, right up on that hill. And the one thing everybody remembers about this big effort to get the school built was the wife of one of the business people involved. She used to always bring chocolate chip cookies to the meetings. Everybody remembers that, and everybody says, yeah, that helped as much as anything. But the point is, these big buildings, they just don't happen by themselves, whether they're federal buildings, state, local, whatever. Sometimes they're private, sometimes they're not. These things just don't happen by themselves. And so the archway, and so that brings me to the story of the archway of the Great Arch in St. Louis. They just did some renovations there, $385 million, mostly federal money, but lots and lots of private donations. Lots of private support groups who lobbied for the money, who said we need this. And so they had a grand opening about a week or two ago. They had a grand opening where people who were involved in who made this archway and the new museum important, they were there cutting the ribbon. Next day story, a bunch of people in St. Louis came out and said, hey, where are the fellas? Where are the lovely ladies? Why aren't there any people there like that? Boy, it's amazing how many people in this country are givers or takers. So you get these people that make this archway a major thing in their lives. They make it happen. And instead of everybody walking up and congratulating them on a job well done, even though St. Louis is kind of falling apart at the seams, it's now a major chocolate city with all the problems of crime and violence and mayhem and denial, deceit, and delusion so rampant in all chocolate cities. But it's amazing how after this happened, the givers made this happen, then the takers show up. The takers didn't go to the givers and say, hey, thanks, good job, you guys really made this happen. No, what they did was they showed up and said, hey, why didn't you have any black and brown people at your ribbon cutting, even though if you were invited and they decided not to show up? Where were they? And so the question that a lot of people in St. Louis are asking in emails to me, and which I'm asking as well, is, well, where were you when the work needed to be done? Where were you when the idea was birthed? Let's take a look at that story.
Celebration turned to controversy after an all-white group of officials took part in the Arch Museum ribbon cutting on Tuesday. A second ribbon cutting was held in the same spot today that organizers called the People's Ribbon Cutting. Organizers said it reflected the true diversity of the city. Russell Kinsall was there and is live at the Arch. Russell?
Well, in a city with a population that's 49% African American, many were shocked that there were no persons of color invited to be right here on this spot to participate in the ribbon cutting. So today at the second ribbon cutting, some of the speakers talked about what they thought that lack of diversity represented. The photo for the ribbon-cutting redo will show a large and diverse crowd. State Representative Bruce Franks helped organize the second ribbon cutting. He wasn't invited to the first, even though the arch is in his district.
And it's much bigger than a photo. This speaks to a systemic issue that we've been dealing with for a long time in the city of St. Louis.
City Treasurer Tashara Jones wouldn't call it a redo. She labeled the second event the People's Ribbon Cutting.
If you look at the photos from last Tuesday and compare it to the one in 1965, it doesn't look any different.
On Tuesday, all of those who lined up for the museum's ribbon cutting were white. Congressman Lacey Clay was invited but could not attend. The second event included a diversity of faiths and ethnicities.
It's important that black and brown communities have true representation to ensure we are given an equal part of the community that we've helped build.
The executive director of the organization that put together the first ribbon cutting apologized to the crowd.
For years, we focused on making this museum the story of everyone involved in our community. That's why we are so sorry the ribbon cutting on Tuesday did not reflect this commitment.
Mayor Lyda Crewson participated in the ribbon cutting Tuesday and attended the second. This time, she sat in the crowd.
We did not do the planning. We did not do the inviting. You know that. That's not an excuse. In the future, we'll ask the questions.
Now, one of the speakers quoted a blog by a local activist named Dean Nichols, who wrote, "This wasn't about who got left out of a picture. It was about affirming that the arch is a place for all people, and sometimes recognizing people who are not white, who are not wealthy, and honoring and recognizing them as well." So the arch today is a place for all people, and that has been affirmed.
And here's a picture of the groundbreaking from the same building. There's 4 women and 3 men there. Okay, well, I'll let you figure out the clever line to attach to that picture. But my question to the picture of all the people who stood up at day 2 and talked about inclusiveness and don't forget us and we built this country and we have a right to be here. My question is, where were you when they were building this thing? Where were you when they were raising money for it? If you go to the Gateway Arch Foundation, you'll see there's lots and lots of places where people contribute. They contribute lots of money to help build and maintain that park. It's a national park. Here's a list of just some of the sponsors. Do you see any black-owned companies on that list? If you do, please let me know. Here's a picture from the Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American Culture, History, and Culture. Let me see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people on the stage at the groundbreaking, including Barack Obama, and 1 white guy. I think that's a white guy. I remember doing a story about this, and for Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Somebody flicked a switch about halfway through the Obama administration. They figured out we have this huge national park system that black people do not like. So lots and lots of people did stories on this. Al Jazeera did stories on it. Russia Today did stories. And of course, if you're going to mention Al Jazeera and Russia Today, you have to mention the New York Times and Washington Post. There were dozens of stories all over the country about the question of, why don't black people use national parks? Why are national parks so white? And these were news stories and commentaries, and so they talk to people, the black people. They go, why don't you use these parks? The guys would go, well, we were growing up, we thought that's where the Ku Klux Klan hung out, and that was a perfectly reasonable answer for the New York Times, because everybody knows that the Ku Klux Klan is hanging out pretty much in national parks all the time. And they kind of just kept on that theme, which is like, hey, everybody knows black people don't go to parks because, well, the national parks aren't welcoming to black people. And that's kind of the theme of what they had going here at the archway, which is, you sit back, you let other people do stuff, and once they do things and work hard to make something happen, you look at them and blame them for not welcoming black people into it when the black people did not do anything to help make it happen. Well, if you go into an effort like that, like helping build the arch or helping build the museum and raising the money it took to do that and to continue its operations, you think if you went in there with real help, real support, real money, you don't think you'd be welcomed? But you want the owners of the archway and the people who run the archway, you want them to have like mind reading thing. Oh, and by the way, they don't need big idea people at these meetings. They don't need people to go in and go, okay, I want everybody else at this table to go out and have fundraisers and tell all your friends and write articles, and then you walk out not doing any of that yourself. No, we don't need, it's kind of the same as this channel, right? We don't need the big idea people. We need the people that like see the big idea and then start doing the millions of little things that will help make this, things like the archway work or this channel work. I mean, it's the same thing. Doesn't matter if you're talking about the archway or this channel. If you like the archway, if you like this channel, send an email to Hannity or Mark Levine or Alex Jones or Rush and say, hey, do you see what's going on with Colin? Do you see what's going on with the archway? You ought to talk about it. It's the same thing. But the big idea people like to come in and they like to stop everything with their big ideas. Then when the thing's done without their help, they like to show up and go, hey, where's all the credit for all the work my people did? When they didn't do a damn thing. They're leeches. They're takers. But I guarantee you this, they're not making the black kids angry.